Welcome to Foxhole Symphony, a podcast about the transformational value of men in authentic community.
In our Foxhole, men are equipped to build relationships that foster belonging, accountability, and growth.
Stop believing the lie that you can thrive in isolation and instead
join us on the journey from broken to whole. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Foxhole Symphony podcast. Excited to be with you again here with my brother, Mark, as I lovingly call Baba G.
Hey, the Rocket Man, Sarge.
Fun to be with you again, bro.
You too.
Yeah, excited to talk about surrender.
Surrender.
Yeah, and not sure, once again, where it'll go, but I know you've got some thoughts, and I've got a couple of thoughts tinkering around in here as well, like a pinball. And so, yeah, we'll just jump right in.
Cool. Well, I want to start with the dictionary definition of surrender.
Okay.
So we kind of get some context,
Sure.
Okay. So surrender is to cease resistance to an opponent and submit to them, to give up or hand over, to lose a contest. Okay. Those are the three things it showed in the Oxford.
What was the first one again?
Cease resistance to an opponent and submit to them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, look, that's what the book said. Now, I think
Right.
Everybody has some idea. Very few people I say, hey, what's surrender mean to you, right? And the first thing I thought of was hands up. Hands above my head.
Yeah.
That's surrender. You put your hands up.
Yeah.
Right? What are the police? Hands behind your head.
Yeah.
Hands up. And there was a time in my life where hands up, I suddenly realized as my faith journey started growing that I'm standing in church at worship services and my hands are up.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I'm not surrendering, I'm praising. My hands are above my head going, hallelujah, thank you. And I'm singing right in front of the speaker so nobody can hear me, right? But then I talked to somebody smart and they're like, no, the hands up at worship is a form of surrender. It's saying, here, I'm yours.
Yeah.
So I was twisted up about surrender right then. I just kind of filed it away. The truth is I don't surrender very often.
Yeah.
Now, should I be submitting more, humbling myself more? Absolutely. That's the whole conversation we're going to have.
Yeah.
But surrender to me usually has a military connotation.
Right.
Right? Because, I studied too much military history.
Yeah.
I understand, surrender. Japanese World War II, who's tapping out
right
in what war.
Right.
But that's where my head was. So that's where I started on this. How about you?
Yeah. So, well, it's interesting that the definition has the word submit in it, at least the Webster's dictionary definition, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever. But because I kind of was coming at it from a little bit of a, I guess, psychological level, my head and heart and mind. I mean, certainly a spiritual, spiritual surrender, but also an addiction. Just so I was thinking about it in terms of 12 steps and,
that's right.
And really starting to look at.
It's an early step, right?
What surrender means in that context, and started to find some differences between submission and surrender. And so,
tell me,
and it's, some of it's just semantics, right? I mean, just work, but interesting. I mean, just some interesting things. And really,
well, hang on one sec.
Yeah.
There may be semantics, but I see submission and surrender as very different, just so you know.
Okay.
I never thought about it before, but when you say when I submit, I think of submitting to Maria.
Right.
Very different than I don't surrender to my wife.
Yeah.
But
yes. So, here's some of what I found.
Maybe I should.
Yeah. Well, so here's how I think of it. I would propose this, that submission is a conscious act, a decision, a conscious decision, a choice.
Okay.
Submission, right? I submit.
Yep.
Whereas surrender can come later as a result of that conscious act, but is often unconscious or subconscious.
Yeah.
It's a subconscious acceptance of reality, of a reality. And, as we look at addiction and recovery and sort of the psychological aspects of submission and surrender, that's one of the main differences that I found. And I found it kind of interesting.
It is, and now you got me thinking. So I think of surrender on my knees. That's what I'm saying.
Yep.
I think of surrender as that final act, that complete turning over of something.
Right.
I think of weakness, truthfully. To surrender is weak. I mean, you want to win the battle, not lose the right. Totally wrong. I get it.
Right.
you didn't know, yeah.
But to that point, sticking with kind of, and not to make this all about addiction and recovery, but I think that there's some great application there that I think people could connect with. Like, I was thinking of an intervention. So sort of a traditional intervention with an alcoholic addict, right?
Yeah.
When all of the people closest to them, who love them the most, who you know have the most relational equity with that individual, come together to hold that individual accountable to the decisions they're making.
Yep.
Right. Before we go there, I want to take one step back and ask the question: what are the qualities or characteristics in a person's nature that make them put up such a battle before finally surrendering? And I think there's two. I think there's two main ones. And you could call them different things, right? I mean, things like pride and ego and all of that. But I think it's two. It's defiance and grandiosity.
Oh.
Defiance and grandiosity. And so defiance, again, thinking of this in terms of, you know, my days battling addiction, defiance masquerades as a very reliable source of inner strength and self-confidence, right? If I defy, you know, I can sort of trick myself into believing that I've got this under control.
Yeah.
Right?
Lie.
I mean, you know, or essentially denial, right? Denial, defying that it's even a reality.
Okay.
Right? Grandiosity or osity. Is it osity or osity?
I think it's grandiosity.
Then we'll call it that.
But it is grandiose, but I think it's grandiosity.
Okay. So grandiosity fills a person with feelings of omnipotence.
Right.
Okay. So here comes some spiritual parallels, and demands for direct gratification of their wishes, right? I deserve this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So, you know, on the one side, defiance says it's not true that I can't, let's say, manage my drinking. Okay? And on the other side of defiance, the facts speak pretty loudly and insist to the contrary. So, and again, on the one side, grandiosity claims there's nothing that I can't master and control. I am in control. I'm the master of my universe, right? And on the other side of grandiosity, the facts demonstrate that, well, the opposite is true. Actually, there's an illusion of control. And that's a whole nother topic that, you know, I would argue we have no control. Control is an illusion that we convince ourselves we have, you know, over the circumstances in our lives.
Yeah, and that I would say that doesn't mean we don't have goals. It doesn't mean we're not driven to complete those goals.
Right.
It doesn't mean that we don't organize people to help us achieve those goals.
Right.
There's a measure of controlling the process, but we're not in control.
No. And again, the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
Right.
Right. The courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So, but this is why, so going back to the intervention, this defiance and grandiosity, this is why the intervention is so significant and often so successful, because it highlights the facts. So here these people come together, they highlight the facts, really minimizing the individual's power to defy them.
Right.
When they, you know, one-on-one accountability, right? I come to you and I say, Mark, you've got a problem, right? You could kind of rationalize that away. Two people come to you and say, Mark, you've got a problem. you might still be able to rationalize that away because you know why? You'll just avoid those two and go, hang out with everybody else, right? But everybody in your life, the most important people in your life come together to say, Mark, you've got a problem. And here are the consequences. Wow. Now we've removed defiance and grandiosity and really, so anyway, and it's those ultimatums that often startle this person out of their grandiose state of thinking they're in control, which of course they never were to begin with. So that, though, I would argue is submission, right? So there's this resistance and they submit.
Right.
Now they go away to rehab and subconsciously learn what it means to surrender. Come to this place of acceptance of the circumstances in their lives. Does that make sense?
I can tie it together.
It's just one example.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I get first of all, we can't miss the biblical part about one brother tells you.
Right.
Go get two.
The church. Here comes the church.
Right. Elders, and all of a sudden you've got your family around you and intervention.
Yes.
So, that ties together neatly for me. I've got to do my homework on submission versus surrender because it's above my pay grade. And I see surrender a certain way, and I quickly go to my marital relationship and family relationships on submission. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm doing a lot of submitting around my house these days. Mm-hmm. I'm not surrendering. It's my house, but I am submitting. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of brain food in there.
There is. Yeah, and then there's the result, right? Like almost, I mean, again, sticking with that, what comes of submission and ultimately surrender.
Right.
And I think that there's a principle there. Again, the fruit, like what's the fruit of surrender, which would highlight and really determine whether or not surrender has actually taken place, because it's a matter of resistance. It's the battle, right? Like you talked about, the war. So there's this matter of resistance. And I can submit and then, I can get pinned and then stand up and punch my opponent in the nose, right? And I didn't surrender, right? Like I momentarily submitted and wanted to keep fighting. Right? Like that's submission
rules,
versus surrender. Whereas surrender, there's a positivity and a peace that results from that acceptance or that heart posture of surrender.
Yeah.
That is just not instant. That's why I suggest maybe it's a subconscious, state that comes as a result of this stage of growth that started with submission.
Well, now you've got me, because I'm thinking one of the questions I made in my notes for this conversation was, what does surrender look like to the 21st century man? What is that? Yeah. So, let me start. So there's biblical a biblical side of this,
sure,
right? That clearly talks about. I'll give you a couple of examples. In Matthew 16:24, let him deny himself, pick up his cross, and follow me.
Yeah.
By the way, the Bible doesn't talk about surrender a lot, but you have to read between the lines a tiny bit here.
Yeah.
Here's Matthew again, 26:39. Jesus fell to his knees and asked God to take this cup of suffering from him. Mm-hmm. James 4:10. Humble yourselves and know the heart of God. Mm-hmm. So there's, from a biblical perspective, there's a giving. You talked earlier about the illusion of control.
Yeah.
You've got to give up control to something. And part of that is a question I want to ask you is, who are we surrendering to?
Yeah.
Who we surrender to who? To what?
Yeah.
But we'll peel that back even further.
Yeah, absolutely. To the one who's in control. And there's only one, right? I mean, at the end of the day, yes, this is the world we're in.
And to your earlier point, what you see pretty clearly, I think, as a journey from submission to surrender, and you said, I think the words acceptance and peace. I don't think a lot of people see it that way. That's not my inclination. Yeah. When I think about it, there's a weakness involved and a giving up of control that I really like to hug really tightly to my chest.
Absolutely.
You know,
but on the other side of that is a freedom
absolutely
from the burden of having to be the one or think we're the one in control.
Right. And I am so with you there. We are wholly aligned on the who's got it.
Yeah.
I mean, I have some things going on in my life right now where I just had to get on my knees and say, I surrender this to you. I have family situations where I just know I can't fix them.
Yeah.
I am incapable of fixing what's in front of me.
Yeah.
I didn't think about submitting to God. I thought about surrendering it to God. I need to totally push it across the table, all my chips, and say, I'm all in.
It's all yours.
Right. I can't do this. Sarge, you know how hard it is for me to say, I can't do this? I mean, you know me well enough.
I do.
Okay.
I do.
I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm right there.
And and it's a beautiful thing. Like that. No, that is a beautiful thing that God's done in you and is doing in you and in your heart, right? All these years of walking with him. And it's like, why is this happening? Listen, God is in it.
Yep.
God is in it. And it's as much for everybody else around you, us, as it is in us and in our hearts and our relationship with him. Ultimately bringing us to this place of surrender. And what comes with that is freedom. Is the freedom that he intended for us to have.
That's the product of it. Yeah.
To live in peace and to just get to just join him at work as he, sees fit.
Right. And that's scary space for me.
Oh,
just so you know, I know you said it.
Yeah, I said so matter of fact.
Right,
yeah,
right,
sure, right.
So that freedom and that peace, that part of the journey, it could possibly be the most scary part for me. The trepidation I have about handing this situation over, any situation.
Yeah.
Look, the truth is I've surrendered lots of crap, but I've mouthed the surrender words.
Yeah.
Done a few surrender things when people were watching and then took control again and tried to fix things in my own strength.
Yeah.
And it's my self-centeredness battle that I've been doing for the last 16 years.
Yeah.
Of 63, not long enough. I didn't get it.
Yeah.
But the battle of self-control and wanting to be in charge and doing it badly.
Yeah.
I can tell you today, I know the difference between leading well and not leading well, between controlling situations and processes that lead me towards goals that I have with other guys in authentic community with God in the middle.
Yeah.
Leading with God in the center is a whole different lifestyle and scary.
Yeah.
If you're driven to get things done, you're an entrepreneur at heart. You're a wonder and invention guy in your heart and your head. I know and love that about you so much. And a lot of that is like, okay, I'm going to do this. Well, Lord, what's your part here? Yeah. You and I know we have said this on this podcast where I keep putting God right over there. Just say, stay right there. I'm pointing to my right.
While we do this.
Yeah. Just sit in that little bar stool next to Sarge. And as soon as I need you, I'll call you.
Yeah.
I mean, I do that every day.
Yeah. Well, sure. Me-centered versus God-centered, right? Going back to take up your cross daily. I mean, that, and the just the resistance as I think about that, the physical resistance, the physical tension of taking up that cross. And of course the emotional, the psychological, the spiritual, tension as well. And the freedom that comes from it. And it's complex because of, our culture and the world we live in and our woundedness and how we've been taught and brought up that we need to, lead and be in control. And for guys like us that are type A leaders, the question is this. I once had somebody ask me, and it was for a leadership position. And he said to me, I know you can lead. I'm confident of that. He said, the question is, can you follow? And when he asked me that, I was so confused and confounded. I'm like, is this a trick question? What do you mean? Why is he asking me this? I'm supposed to be leading. Well, of course, I need to be able to follow in order to lead well with God. Just like you said, leading with God in the center requires me to follow him. and for men in particular, that's hard to do.
Well, that's when I asked you, it wasn't a rhetorical question. What's surrender look like for the 21st century man? The journey or evolution for me was things like this. And in the beginning, there was Mark. And everything.
The beginning was the Mark.
Baba G ran, and so doing things in my own strength. Someone wakes me up one day and taps me on the forehead with a 2x4, which I needed, and said, "There's more to this. It's not just about you." Yeah. Okay, and so I'm going to leap ahead to all right, now I'm going to still do the same thing, but at the end of my plan, I'm going to say, "What do you think, Jesus? How's this look?"
Yeah,
and someone hit me again in the forehead and go, "No, that's good for asking." But how about we bring the Lord in at the beginning of the process? Yeah. And this evolution for men today, I think, I'll only speak for me, I need to be reminded. One of the reasons I have so many devotionals and so many little Bible things in my day is to stop me long enough to go, okay, I know you're with me.
Yeah.
I know you got this. And I'm going to trust you, which that's a big trust.
Yeah,
there's lots of trust, the trust you have with your wife, and so. But to take my lifestyle, my livelihood, the decisions I make about what church I'm going to, who I'm contributing to, things like that, and say, Lord, I'm going to trust you with this. I'm going to trust you with my kids. I know with your fear with your kids, that big trust I'm talking about.
Yes,
Lord, I'm going to trust you with this.
Yeah.
It's exactly where I am now in tapping out and trying to fix what's happening with my son.
Yeah. And you're right. Like with my kids, I've been through that the last year and as you know, and experiencing, my daughter totaling her car and thank God, she was okay and walked away from that. But did that really, solidify, my trust in him and realize the illusion of control that I had over my kids and their safety and their security. It's not, I don't have it. Sure, I could put them in a cell, put them in a box and a bubble, right? Like
rubber suit.
And of course, over different ages and stages, it changes and how we can do that. But, it's funny how as they grow, we get, we realize we have less and less control over them, right? When they're little, you pick them up, you move them, you put them there and you say, stay, right? Like, don't move.
You're making me think of Seinfeld, Bubble Boy.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. Great episode.
Yeah.
So again, there's this illusion of control, but also that freedom, as I'll mention again, that comes from acknowledging that I'm not in control.
It is. There is that. And I'm going to coin an old phrase. Remember, let go and let God?
Yes.
Well, I hate that. First of all, it doesn't make any sense to me, but what does that really look like?
So if you don't release your grip on whatever it was that I had my grip, and I've got my two fists out in front of me, and there's something, again, very powerful about our physical posture. Yeah. You mentioned earlier, getting on your knees, raising up your hands, lying down prostrate on your face. Like, the physical act of submission that leads to surrender is very powerful. And I remember them saying, if you don't release your grip and open up, God will pry your fingers open.
Mm.
And I'm like, wow, that's far more painful than just opening up my hands and saying, Lord, it's yours. But I've experienced that. And we've experienced that. People,
absolutely.
If you think about it and apply that and look back in your life at times of things that you were holding on to so near and dear, and God pried open your fingers, said, you know what, if you won't give it to me, I'm just going to force it, I'm going to take it. And man, that's a painful reality.
And that grasping applies to good and bad things.
Yes. Yeah.
You're holding onto an addiction. You can also be holding onto your leadership position.
Yeah.
I'm leading so well. And you need to let go of that also and give it to God. It's not just one-sided. It's not just doom and gloom, rags to riches. It's also riches to riches.
Absolutely. It's awesome. Awesomely said. And it's anything that we put before God.
Right.
It's any idol.
Often for me, what we're talking about, I imagine and I say this too much lately because of my exposure to men in addiction.
Yeah.
A lot of the things we do involve men who haven't yet reached the bottom of themselves.
Which is symptomatic, which is only symptomatic.
Correct. But what's the bottom look like? Like, well, he's not at the bottom yet, meaning he's not ready to let go. I'm doing my fist now.
Yeah.
Right. People that you have counseled.
Yeah.
Put your arm around. And I can think of 3 of them right off the top of my head, people I know that you've invested in.
Yeah.
They just weren't ready to let go.
No.
And you want good for them. You want it more than they do.
Yeah.
You know the freedom that comes with that surrender.
Yeah.
By the way, and I'm not speaking from an authority figure here of understanding this well enough. I do it sometimes.
Right.
My submission and surrender needs a lot of work. But that said, what's the bottom? Do you have to get to the bottom of yourself to do this?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Can you surrender without selling out, without tapping out?
Well, that's why, again, I think that the actual act of surrender is this subconscious process of acceptance that comes after that initial submission. Particularly, and listen, there's no one size fits all. I think the answer to your question is it depends. As my family in Italy would say, depende. It's not black and white. We're complex beings, and our experiences, our current circumstances, the other people in our lives, our community, what's happening, where we're at. The bottom, I think looks different. How much is enough pain, right? What is each of our individuals' threshold for pain? Mine's like a 3. Right? Like others are a 10. When I'm sick, I'm like, I don't want, so, I think that it's just different for everybody. And it comes down to how much pain can you withstand before you go, man, I've had enough. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And
how about that?
I'm tired of the charade, the defiance and the grandiosity. I'm ready for acceptance and humility. Right. And, yeah, unfortunately, that looks different. And unfortunately, many never get to that place. They never get to that place.
No, and I think too many men, me included, at some time in our lives, see surrender as weakness, right? Because we're taught, just as you and I talked about in very early episodes, about, lie, turn the other cheek, toughen up, Put some mud on it, the swelling will go down.
Yeah.
Well, the 21st century man, I think, is looking at surrender for today, men I know and love, for them to say, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Are hard. It's hard 4 words, man.
Yeah.
Hard.
Right.
To admit that about anything, no less life-changing things.
Which literally is coming to the end of ourselves.
Correct.
I mean, that therein lies the bottom. Now, the timing of that is different for everybody, but coming to that place of conclusion that, again, control is an illusion and I can't do it because it's not mine to control anyway.
Yeah.
Man, that is the place we all need to get to and lead others to.
Well, okay, let's lead them there. Here, I'm going to give you the $64,000 question for me. And one of the roadblocks I didn't even realize I had till I read something is I surrender. Now what?
Yeah.
What happens after the surrender, Sarge? And it's a rhetorical question, but one of the reasons I was loath to surrender is because, okay, oh God, I can't do this anymore. This is yours.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah. Well,
what do I do?
Yeah. First of all, it's not a magic wand or a light switch. It's a process. And often one that needs to be, like, as you said earlier, take up your cross daily, right? There's a daily surrender, or maybe an hourly, or submission. But, surrender means the fight is over. It's the cessation of the fight or the battle. So what comes of that is peace, right? It's logically to be followed by peace and quiet. And so, it's not without, though, the ongoing work of, to meet resistance again and again as the circumstances of life arise, and continually surrender each of those and ask the question, who am I surrendering to? Who do I submit this to? Versus, listen, it goes back to, I'm thinking about getting beat on as a kid, with noogies and, all of it. Right. And as a 7-year-old, you stand up and puff your chest up and say, I'm never going to let that happen again. Right.
Right.
I'm going to break through. I'm going to fight.
Yep.
Right. So
that hurt.
Yeah. And so, these experiences carry with us into adulthood, whatever those experiences may be, but it's worth asking, what were your experiences related to the fight, physical or otherwise? And how does that show up in your life now? And what needs to die in you?
Right.
In order for you to embrace the discomfort, in order that there's less and less of a fight, there's less and less resistance. And as the circumstances in our lives that would typically elicit a fight,
yep,
now elicit surrender. We now, it's now the common, response is dropping to our knees in prayer, opening up our hands, raising up our arms, lying down on our face, saying, it's not my battle. It's not my battle. Right?
Yep.
Again, I bring up Exodus 14:14 like once every 5 episodes, but the battle is the Lord's. The battle is the Lord's. And he says, just be still. Be still. Know that I'm God. I will fight for you.
Right.
And that is that's just, to me, the culmination of a mature relationship in Christ.
I love that. By the way, I have to say, your analogy of the 7-year-old puffing his chest out, getting in a fight, these are the things we were taught as young men, as boys, right? And I use an example that you have to be a little older and know college basketball in the 80s, but I talked to you about Jimmy Valvano, the V Foundation. NC State beats Georgetown in 80-something, and he dies of cancer, and he stands up in front of people at the ESPYs one day and says to everybody, and this is the theme of the V Foundation, which has raised gazillions of dollars for cancer research, he says, don't give up, don't ever give up.
Yep.
Those are the words he chose to share of all the things he could have shared. And it's the exact wrong message. It's right if you're fighting cancer.
Right.
And you don't want to give up the battle against cancer. You want to live.
Yeah.
At the same time, what you just said now about the journey from surrender to freedom is the most important part. And so when I asked rhetorically, what happens after you surrender? I believe what we're doing is acknowledging God's sovereignty over our lives. We're saying every little thing, not just the cathartic, monster life-changing events in our lives we're surrendering to, but having a heart of humility each day when you get up.
Sure.
It's interesting. We keep talking about pick up your cross daily and follow me.
Yeah.
Well, the Bible also says that your mercies are new every day.
Right.
Well, how about that when you open your eyes?
Yeah. It also says, be strong.
Right.
Put on the full armor of God. It says all these things, right? It's not the opposite. So to your point, knowing, placing our faith in the sovereignty of God and then moving ahead. It's not being, lazy. No. It's not about that. It could go back and listen to, if you don't understand truly what it means to be strong in humility and meekness, go back and listen to Spice's episode, with Steve Spicer.
Yep. Episode 11,
and the radical transformation, to that place of being strong. So that's not what we're saying, right? We're not saying, just, stand up, for those who can't stand up for themselves. I mean, there's listen, plenty of action required.
Right.
That said, those reflect joining God at work versus the me-centered approach of needing to fight for me versus fighting for the kingdom. Two very different things.
Totally. And to take us back to caves, once you surrender, you don't get to hide in the cave of apathy.
Right.
That's the one we talked about, right?
Yes, exactly.
All of a sudden it's like, not mine.
Yeah.
I'm doing the hands up like,
just let God do. God will do it.
Yeah. That's not what this is. And it's not what we're suggesting. It's not what we're recommending either. I can tell you that surrender has been an active process for me.
Oh, absolutely.
Very, very active process. It's current. This is raw. I'm so glad you brought this up. I mean, really, it makes a big difference. I want to talk for a minute about surrendering in authentic community.
Yeah.
Since it's what we're about. And I can tell you that for me, having my 3 or 4 closest brothers with me through the battles, reminding me that it isn't about me, that is an illusion of control, that I won't be weaker for having surrendered, that good will come, that I say in just about every prayer, Lord, I trust you and I believe in you. Well, if I do, then handing it to him shouldn't be that hard, but it is. So I'm interested in any insights you have in terms of surrendering alone versus surrendering in a community, in a foxhole where you trust people that are around you.
Yeah. What's coming to mind is Moses and his arms up, and his arms grew tired, and somebody needed to hold his arms up for him. And that
right, he would have lost a connection with God at the time. That's right.
That's right. That image is what comes to mind, and I'm thinking, like, when my arms grow too tired to remain up in surrender, I need my brothers to hold my arms up for me.
Yeah.
Or to remind me, or again, goes back to the beginning. I mean, the interventions, or, it's a growth process. And I don't know about you, but I can convince myself pretty easily that I can, defy, certain circumstances, defy reality, or that I've got this. This isn't a real problem.
Right.
Just the rationalization. And so, we need people to speak into our lives. We need people to sharpen us. We need people to lovingly hold us accountable. We need people to intervene. We need people to hold our arms up when we don't feel strong enough to do so. We need people to encourage us, to love on us, none of this happens in isolation. None of it.
Right.
So it's all about authentic community. What you talked about, this process you're going through right now, and what God's doing in you. Like, I don't know, how is it? I know you're not doing it alone.
No.
But if you were, I don't know what would happen. I mean, you tell me.
It wouldn't happen. It wouldn't. I know what trying to do things in my own strength and alone looks like.
Yeah.
There is no way. There's no successful formula, equation to get me and my family to where we need to be.
Yeah.
With me out front.
Yeah.
I've got to be in the middle.
Yeah.
Not in the back.
Yeah.
In the middle.
Yes. Yeah. And, the other thing that happens in community that we're called to biblically is to submit to one another. Submit to one another. And so even in our, within our communities, whether it's our marriage, our family, other brothers, submitting to one another, right? We see this on Mark Men weekends. Can I get the agenda ahead of time? What's going to happen every 15 minutes? Like, we're control freaks. How about that for a generalization?
Not me.
So like, it's just, so my point is, in authentic community, giving each other, following each other, submitting to one another in love, ultimately to Christ is a beautiful thing. And we learn and we grow and we humble ourselves as we do that.
Yeah.
Again, the body of Christ, different gifts.
Right.
There's a place for everyone.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, being that ligament in the back of the knee and that support that's not out in front. You're not the nose.
I like that.
Right? You're kind of behind the scenes, but man, what a critical, without that ligament, boom.
You're on your knees.
We're going
funny. I'm going to close us with something I found about spiritual surrender.
Yeah.
So hopefully it'll resonate with people that are listening. It says, spiritual surrender is an act of faith, keeping hope alive by choosing defeat over death. It is the first act for those coming to salvation and the continual habit of those walking with Christ. To spiritually surrender means to let go control and trust God. I felt that was a very good summation of what we've been talking about and what's God's put on my heart over these last couple of months.
Yeah.
As, I'm climbing mountains.
Yeah. And I would just say to people, if you don't know where it starts, drop to your knees, physically open up your hands, talk to God, and tell him that you don't know how to do it, that you can't do it, and he will respond.
Right. And I would only add to that beautiful suggestion is if you could do it with another guy.
Yeah.
If you find a relationship, someone you trust, where you can have that and hold hands with somebody and lock arms with somebody. It's pretty interesting how surrendering in authentic community is life-giving.
Yeah. Amen. This was fun.
Yeah, man. Good to talk to you.
You as well.
We'll be back.
God bless you all.
Peace. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening today. We talked about the topic of surrender and when it's time to really throw our hands up and submit to our Creator God. We explored the differences and similarities between surrender and submission, what defiance and grandiosity really do to impact us in our walk, and how it's not our second nature to surrender as men of the 21st century. We talked about the only person to surrender to is simple. It's God. And what letting go and letting God really looks at today, it's a daily process of surrendering, not just an event. We really dug into how important it is to surrender with an authentic community around you, to have a foxhole full of people that understand the value of submitting to one another. Really happy to have a chance to talk to you all today about this. The journey from surrender to freedom is something we all need to be thinking more about, and how important that is to really living the full lives, the robust lives that we were designed to live by God. I'd like to say thank you for Sarge's internal compass and his training. A shout out to the Eagle Scouts out there, to our brother Jimmy Valvano, and to Cheap Trick.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it and invite others to the Foxhole. You can find us wherever you download your favorite podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you know when new episodes drop, and please rate us and comment there too, as it'll help us get found by others who could benefit. Find, follow, and like us on your go-to social media networks by searching Foxhole Symphony, or visit foxholesymphony.com to make it super easy to find us. Drop us a line with feedback, questions, topic requests, who knows? Maybe you'll be a guest on a future episode. In the meantime, prepare to move, embrace discomfort, and just be you.